Oh yes, you know, I've enjoyed being on this website.
That is amazing. Thank I was one of these things where it's fascinating that they were able to do that. Just interesting to me.
Does Geo have the ability to
Absolutely, absolutely.
But of course, someone once told me if you want people to come to a meeting, entice them with something valuable.
do you have the ability to update a post on Cypress?
We're putting it right in the center. Oh wow. You try and you can have
Okay, you can do it from there if you want. They really push this side. I don't think I'll be able to.
I have staff paper.
But I want to, Winchester's 73, and I want to shoot it in what's called a short rifle. Like target barrel.
But unfortunately,
the middle of July, 1953. And we start looking for all the interactions that we had in July.
I don't know how you hold that up all.
And I love my room. Nice to meet you.
With a passion. Get me off this, get me off. How are you? Good. Very good teacher.
Oh, very good. Actually, one of my favorites.
Good, how are you?
Yes, sir. So there's the study.
No worries. Oh, where is that? Oh, right there it is.
What's that? No, they have candy. Oh, you like the big red thing? No. I'm just having candy right now because it's on my sheet.
Wait, Gio made a push, right?
Yeah, he made it already. I think. All good for some games. No, when we started.
Make up the same. Vintage guns.
One of them, yep.
He's a very good teacher. He worked as a US assistant.
Like a sport for old guys. They are 15.
These guys are current teachers, and I think it's a 2-year position is what they oversee, and then they have to go to re-election. So their fellow educators have to say, okay, we either want you to just
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call to order this first Academic Senate meeting of November, the only Academic Senate meeting of November, and the second to the last Academic Senate meeting of this semester.
But who's counting?
Who's counting? There it is. So, are there any alternates here? I see Kathy Wada for Sarah Jones, and we have for our academics, our associated students, you've already got that one? Okay. I got that message, but I don't see her yet. Is that our only alternate? All right. Is there anyone here for public commentary?
Yes.
All right. So I'll start over on this side, work my way over if you don't mind. Gary, what do you have for us?
I received an anonymous letter from a person stating that they were an adjunct that I've been asked to read. I'm a part-timer and not very new to this campus. I was so happy last year about having more part-timers in Academic Senate. It's not easy to speak up. We are mostly a silent majority. It's difficult for me to speak up, so I'm writing this. Part-timers and students are a majority minority. That's why I'm especially upset by the video from the last Senate meeting. A very respectful student who was a veteran came to speak about Bond Measure J. He used his rights and then respectfully left. What happened after that, I'm appalled at. A senator spoke in favor of the measure and then directly criticized many of the opinions of the brave student who wasn't even in the room to speak back. This is a mean thing, and if you need proof, you can watch the YouTube video. I watched this part many times because it does not make sense that teachers would criticize a student for respectfully expressing his thoughts and questions. How can teachers on Senate say they are surprised that students speak up for what they believe? Are senators so powerful they can easily question student motives and say it is a bad thing for students to speak up and ask questions? I am ashamed that this has happened to the student. How can teachers publicly scold a student and then treat him like he was wrong to speak up and ask questions? Plus, the brave student was not even in the room. I am ashamed as a teacher, but I am only part-time here, like most of the people on campus. No senator teacher stood up for the student or stopped the mean criticism of his speech when he wasn't even there to speak back. That is why I'm writing this. All the Senate teachers seemed comfortable and accepting of publicly scolding the student for his opinions and questions. Everyone should watch the YouTube video and ask themselves why this happened. I am very sad to see teachers believe they have so much power because they can say things without being questioned themselves. Maybe Cypress Senate is a place of power for only a few. I am questioning, but I have to question secretly in order to feel safe.
Our wonderful, wonderful secretary just brought to my attention, I skipped over the adoption of the agenda. And
I'll take back everything I just said and we'll do it again later.
So forgive me, I was overwhelmed with the public presence. I was certainly looking forward to hearing their public commentary first, which is why I clearly forgot to adopt the agenda. Folks, there's a couple of items on the agenda that would be within the purview of time sensitivity. One of which is what we adjourned on last time, which was the newsroom hours. So I would ask that we would entertain that item first, right underneath public commentary, and leave off the special reports and the president's report until after that item, if that would be okay.
under that item, I would also like to move up the new business item of funding your expenses for plenary.
Oh.
Considering that you're there right now, sort of, and that expense, you know, it's an issue.
Okay.
I'd like to bring that right up to under the item that you just mentioned.
Okay, so right now we would have, after adoption of the agenda and public commentary, the letter A under unfinished business, and then item A under new business, which would be the plenary session funding. Okay. Is everyone okay with those moving up underneath public commentary?
Yes.
Okay, very well. Then I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. Then I will move to approval of the minutes from October 23rd. Are there any corrections? Everyone get a chance to review them? I'll entertain a motion to accept them as written. That's what it technically doesn't mean.
Motion to accept.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Any items that need to be adjusted on it, otherwise they will be accepted as written. Very well. We will move on to public commentary then. We were moving this way. Dr. Simpson, welcome to Academic Senate.
Really, I just wanted to give you an update, a few reports. First, I'm not going to steal any thunder here, but the board took a momentous decision on Tuesday and approved a baccalaureate degree for Cypress College. I want to say that it was not without controversy because the DCCC voted 4 in favor of Fullerton College, 3 in favor of Cypress College, 1 abstention. And the concern that was expressed at the board was that was the faculty primarily advising the board, and they're required to primarily rely. And I agree with that. But to primarily rely doesn't mean must act in accord with. And this was a case, one of the very, very few cases I know of in the district when the board did not act in accord with, in essence, the will of the Senate. That is a very serious matter, but I believe that any unbiased or disinterested party who looked at the facts and the strengths of the programs being presented would have agreed with the board's decision. You will not be surprised to hear that Fullerton would disagree with my position. The next item, you see barrier fences in front of the college. We're installing the marquee, so that's going forward. We expect that will be completed before we come back for the spring break. I wanted to give you a Measure J update. As of 5 p.m. yesterday, in Orange County, Measure J stands at 55%. In Los Angeles County, which is a very small piece of the electorate, the vote was 51.5%. And so that's about 3,500 votes, and that's enough to have us just under overall 55%. But there are 21,000 uncounted votes. And each of the last 2 days, we have picked up about 1,000, about 600. If that trend continues, Measure J will in fact pass. We'll see. So after this meeting, I'll be in my office. Right at 5 o'clock, they post it. And I remain optimistic, but cautiously, after the disappointment of election night. And finally, I just wanted to inform all of you, if you weren't aware, on the board agenda Tuesday night, there was, in the personnel part of the packet, Dr. Dauphiny announced his retirement, and he will be leaving us. February 28th will be his last day. And I believe it will be a very significant loss for the district. He's been an outstanding and effective leader, an effective advocate for us. And speaking for myself, I will very much miss his leadership. And I thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you very much. Moving on, public commentary. All right.
Good afternoon, Senators, fellow guests. I had prepared a little speech, but then I realized that when I write, I get even wordier than when I speak. I had a whole list of different things I wanted to talk to you about, kind of reaffirming my position and clarifying my position on Measure J at the last time I spoke to you. I wanted to clarify that I did not stand opposed or for Measure J. My request was simply for more information so that we can make a clear, concise, and informed decision. One of the things I wanted to bring up was, in particular, my use of clairvoyancy. At this point, I, as a student, and several other students, were desperate for anything, even a psychic vision that would give us some forethought or some foresight into the future of what was going to happen to make an informed decision. I will try to word myself more carefully next time so that those of varying academic credentials and levels can properly understand me. There's a lot of things that I heard on the video that I was wanting to address. But again, it's a moot point. The votes have been cast. What's going to happen is what's going to happen. I particularly wanted to address the information we had got before, and this is the reply provided by President Simpson to the ICC that we received the day after the vote, and according to the print date on that was printed out on the 28th. But the information that we received, as I've read it, I thought was kind of inadequate, and I wanted to give all of you an opportunity to see what I'm seeing, and if you agree or disagree, unfortunately I will not be able to be here to hear that. I will watch the video though. But I did want to I wanted to put out there the information I was receiving to better provide understanding for where I was coming from with my position. The final thing I wanted to say that as a veteran, the use, the effigy, the mock-up, the image, and the word veteran carries a lot of weight in this country. Do it for the veterans has become the new, won't someone think of the children. I don't want us put on a pedestal. No veteran wants us put on a pedestal. Just because we have served does not mean we are any smarter, stupider, better, or worse than any other person. What I do take offense to is when those who've never put on a uniform, who've never picked up a rifle, who've never stood a post, and who have never put their life as sacrifice to this country, choose to use this benevolent position we've been granted, this benevolent title we've been granted in this country now where veterans can do no wrong, and dear God, don't vote for anything against them, otherwise you're opposing the veterans and you're un-American. Call back to McCarthyism days. It is an insult to everything that we have done. Every morning that we woke up at 4:30, shaved our face, put on our PT gear, we went out and ran 5-10 miles. We would go practice on the range, shooting, practice our demo, practice close order drill. All this stuff we did when we deployed. We did not do that to come back here and have our service used as leverage to grease the skids for a measure, a vote, a politician, anybody that is not acting above board. The concerns I brought to you before were simply that I did not believe Measure J was acting above board. I did not like that my veteran status was associated with it. It was an insult and a slap in the face to everything I dedicated 8 years of my life to. And I'm going to call out the elephant in the room. The letter that was read before was written about me. I appreciate it. Thank you. However, I am not one to let insults, slights, anything along those lines affect me. I'm a firm believer, attack the argument, not the arguer. I would hope that when I bring arguments to this Senate, to this governing body that I look at with, believe it or not, a lot of respect and a lot of admiration, because I see you guys as those who are here to help the students, help the teachers, and help this school become better. I hang my head in shame when I see some of the actions taken by individual senators and the Senate as a whole. That's not something I'm trying to say to offend anyone, but that is my opinion. That is what I see, and I see a lot of people playing the game, nodding along, or sitting in the corner and coloring until it's time for something else. The positions of leadership that you hold, and the positions of authority and power that you hold on this campus and amongst the district should not be taken as lightly as such. You as educators and you as senators have a power to make real change, to hold the feet to the fire of those above you, just as you hold the students to the fire below you. When they bring you a paper and you say, no, you did not provide me enough information on this, go back and do it again or you get an F. You can do that with these positions you hold with those above you. And when we as the constituents come to you, I would hope that that idea, that prospect, would at least be entertained. As I said before, what's done is done on Measure J. I hope that the lessons learned from that are carried over to the next major issue focused on by this Senate. Thank you very much.
And I'd also like to bring everyone's attention, when I came in and the room was set up in a classical classroom format, he helped put this together.
Very cool.
Thanks.
For the Secretary's benefit, tell everyone at the Senate your name.
My apologies, sir. Daniel Lutz, L-U-T-Z.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. You all have a good day.
Any others for public commentary? Yes, sir.
I just want to congratulate a colleague of mine, Dr. Mike Flores, the guy who didn't get the staff development job. He won election to the Ontario Montclair School District Board. We can now call him, in addition to Dr. Flores, we can call him Trustee Flores. So, congratulations.
Yes, sir.
If I could just have a moment of your time, I would want to address a couple of issues. First, the fact that those who were involved in the campaign weren't or aren't veterans. Dr. Dauphiny served honorably in the military. I did the same in the Vietnam era. And so I do know something about veteran service. Secondly, in the survey that we did of the community before the Board of Trustees decided to place Measure J on the ballot, the community expressed one of its highest priorities was providing adequate and appropriate service to veterans. And had we put that measure on the ballot without consideration of the public's desire to enhance and improve our ability to serve veterans, would, I believe, have been a slap in the face of the community. Thank you.
Any others for public commentary? Yes, sir.
Some good news from Career Technical Education. The Automotive Technology Department had a meeting with Tesla Motors today, and we have entered into a verbal agreement to move forward on setting up a more formal conduit for our students to gain employment at Tesla Motors service centers. And I wanted to invite everyone across campus for a tentative date. I'll send out by email the confirmed date, but tentatively December 3rd. We're having our advisory council meeting, and Tesla Motors is now a member of that council. They're going to bring vehicles over and take people out for rides. So if you're once the date's confirmed, I'll send that out, and you can come on over and get a ride. They might even let you drive.
Right now it's tentative December 3rd.
Tentative.
That's great.
Thank you. Any others for public commentary? All right, then I asked that we move the unfinished business item up under public commentary, letter A. We started our discussion about the restrictions placed on the hours of the newsroom, and at our last Senate meeting, that discussion had expanded to other areas of campus where students would like to use non-instructional areas outside of the line of sight of faculty members. And we were asked to invite Dr. Simpson and Karen Kant to answer questions and help explain some of the policy. So if you will, Dr. Simpson, will you give us some information?
Happy to do so. Students and anybody who wants to has open access to what we call the walk-through areas of the college. So, for example, the hallway of the humanities building that has internet access and seating, and we've made it comfortable for students, those kinds of areas. So there's no supervision is required. Then we have other areas that are specifically intended for instruction. And that's not necessarily just a classroom. For example, our library. I know many people believe that's a public library, and so everybody gets open and free access. No, it is not. It's an academic library built and intended specifically for the purpose of supporting instruction here at the college. And to the extent that we're able to provide non-student, non-faculty, non-staff access that is not in conflict with the primary purpose, we want to do that, and we have done that. And then we get to what are specifically designated instructional areas, classrooms and laboratories, for example. And those areas are not open to the public, and they are not open in an unsupervised manner to students. There has been no change in policy at the college, not since I've been here, not in anybody's memory, that that at one time we allowed students into our classrooms, our laboratories, our other instructional areas in an unsupervised manner. Now, I dare say that certainly has happened in the past, but it was not in accord with district policy that we don't allow unsupervised access by students or the public to our instructional areas. Well, why don't we do that? Well, first and foremost, we don't do that in consideration of safety of our students. Unsupervised access by students to our instructional areas, could be late at night, could be other times, subjects them to exposure to risk. What kind of risk? Sexual assault, for example, which has happened in our unsupervised instructional spaces. It exposes the college to the possibility of theft and loss of thousands of dollars worth of equipment, which has happened in our instructional spaces when they were not supervised. The possibility of alcohol or drug use comes into play if we're providing access in an unsupervised manner, and it has happened. And so we take very seriously our charge that we need to provide adequate and appropriate opportunities for students to engage in activities that support their academics. And we want to do that. But to provide access unsupervised to our instructional areas is really not an option. And I would ask any of you, if you give students access to one of your instructional areas and there is a sexual assault that occurs while you're gone but they're there, who's responsible? If there is theft and you've given the access, who's responsible? If there's drug use or alcohol abuse and you've given access, who's responsible? And so we want to avoid all of those scenarios. At the same time, we don't want to degrade what you believe is necessary to support students in instruction. And so I actually spoke with students from the journalism program who were concerned about restrictions on time. And hearing what the concern was, that they have deadlines and productions that they have to engage in, I have a very simple solution to that problem. Let us know when you need access, and we will assure that a college employee is available. Either somebody who is currently an employee, or we'll hire somebody if we need to as an instructional assistant or an instructional aide, so that there is supervision and students can do what they need to do. I respect the fact there may be production deadlines. I respect the fact that in our intercollegiate athletics, our student athletes may need access to their team rooms, which I consider an instructional space. We can provide that in a supervised manner, I believe. But the idea that we would issue to students keys or access cards to our instructional spaces and then hope that nothing untoward will happen, that's just a liability for all of the reasons and more that I've indicated that the college simply cannot assume.
Thank you. Did that answer any of the questions that you still have holding over from last time? Mr. Mercer?
I'm disappointed I wasn't allowed to present first to lay out the problems. Since I had brought the problem to the Senate, I thought I would have a chance to lay it out. Yes, we appreciate the offer. We'll take you up on it. But I do want you to understand the background. Many of you have a lecture, you have homework, you go home. Those who are in student activities live here. Our students are our best friends. Truthfully, Paul's a good friend, but I know Gerard better. Okay, so the student activities is the college education. We used to joke in training, we would conduct a training session, but it was the water cooler where the lesson was learned. And it's in the student government offices. It's in the journalism newsroom. It's in the stage of the theater. It's in the forensics prep room where these lessons are learned. And we have seen a climate of fear, a fear of liability that has begun to paralyze this college and this district, because we really are talking district policy, in the last 20 years. It's paralyzing us. And to apply line of sight to a non-classroom activity, well, it just brings everything to a stop. Okay, who's affected directly? Journalism, student government. They, again, cannot spend time in their offices. A student admitted that, oh, you know, yeah, I'm in my office, but you can't tell anybody because I'll get caught. This is an elected, over 21-year-old adult. And you don't trust this person to be in their office? Theater. These, again, are adults. They vote. They get drafted. Well, not anymore, but they will. There's still a draft. You don't believe it.
At risk.
But anyway, and you don't trust them? Forensics. You have a prep room. You check out a key. They go in there and prep. There may or may not be an instructor in the hallway. There's certainly not line of sight. Athletics. Well, there's a workout room. The instructor, the coach, has things to do. Sometimes he's there, and as we have learned in our research, sometimes he's not, or she's not. Clubs. Clubs are held in classrooms. Again, and you apply line of sight to a club meeting. You know, I'm thinking, I used to advise the, Korean Christians for Christ club. I forget the exact name. Being an atheist, you know, who knows. Anyway, but I did it because they needed an advisor. But I had to sit there the whole meeting because someone is afraid of liability. Okay, okay, now let's go back to 1996 when I arrived. Students, yes, indeed, could check out keys. In fact, they had their own keys. The editor had a key. If the editor, who was an elected leader of the group, was in the room, no problem. This is an adult. They've taken responsibility. This is still the case at Fullerton College. Student government officials had their own keys. This is still the case at Fullerton College. I can address theater. I'm not sure exactly how that works. But like I said, I do know currently both at Fullerton and here, students check out the key. Now, when I came, they had their own key. Then in 2000, they said, well, they have to check it out. So they have to check in with somebody. They're in the room, fine. And to my knowledge, we've never had any incidents in student activity spaces. I'm only aware of 2 violent incidents, a suicide on top of nursing, which had nothing to do with line of sight, and a kidnapping in parking lot 9, which had nothing to do with line of sight. So in 20 years, I've not seen any violence. I'm only aware of 2 lawsuits, and those were both for wrongful termination. Okay. So this was the policy, and so when we anyway, in 2000, they can't have a key, so we went to that they can check out the key. And the dean and I parsed the policy and said, yes, that looks good. Well, in May, Karen Kant says, no, journalism can no longer do this. When I mentioned this to other departments, they said, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to get caught. We can't operate if we do this. We can't operate under these rules. We can't run a theater department. We can't run a speech program if we follow these rules. And truthfully, you can't really run a journalism program. We had it, when I came, a student could come at 7:30 in the morning and leave at 10 o'clock at night. And times 5, you figure it out. I'm a humanities major. Okay. So then we went to, okay, they can check out a key as long as we're here. Well, that's 40 hours a week. Now, it's I have to be there. Well, I'm paid for 8 hours as a release time. I figured out by cobbling together my office hours, the time I spend grading, I got it up to 22 hours. I live on this campus. I'm not paid for it, but then, you know, it's the job. Some wanted me to cut that time back to 8. You're only paid for 8. And I said, no, you don't teach journalism in 8 hours. Now, why are all these students here? 1, because they need the help. And 2, because they can't be in the newsroom right now putting out the magazine that we're on deadline. They can't learn right now because I'm here. So, bear with me a second here. It also is costing us money. We're moving, we were here till 10 o'clock last night. I was here because the students were here. Migrating our website from our on-campus server to an online server, onto the cloud. Because when we have a server problem, our students cannot come to this campus and get access to the newsroom and fix the server. If I come here without my key on a weekend, security will not let me into my office. I learned this. Even though they know it's my office. They're good friends of mine. I like the guys in security. I'm not risking my job. That's paranoia. Now, I appreciate the offer to hire extra personnel. Can we get 40 hours of personnel? That would be a question. Can Jim get 40 hours of personnel? Can Pat get 40 hours of personnel? Or can Okawa get 40 hours of personnel? Can we restore this campus to what it was even in the year 2000? Now, one of the things that the President and I have talked about, besides the immediate fix of hiring minders, think about it, a 21-year-old student needing a minder is hopefully with the Measure J, we can create what Margie Lewis first envisioned for the CCC, in that it would be a space where all student activities occurred. Now, I don't know what happened in the build-out, and it never happened, and they wound up over at the swimming pool. But nonetheless, that would be a nice thing to think about in the future. Of course, why can't we just get better insurance? We've had our risk, if I look at a 50-year crime history of this campus, our risk is so low. You know, I can't imagine that it costs that much money to get to buy the insurance. And I truthfully, while we say it's about the security of the students, I truthfully believe it's about the security of careers that has brought us to this moment. I don't want to be there when things go wrong. I have been there when things went wrong. I have called the police. Had nothing to do with line of sight. In fact, it was kind of funny. Elmo and Dave had to take the guy down, and they're yelling at me, call the police. And I said, excuse me, I thought I just did. So and then somebody walked in on drugs. So yes, stuff happens, to use a euphemism. It's always going to happen. But is it worth totally paralyzing the education of students to create a make drive-by education? Or do we want them to have the full college experience? I was a petty officer in the U.S. Navy. And one thing I learned is that people rise to the expectation you have of them. And if you treat them like an untrustworthy minor, I'll guarantee you they'll act like it. Or if you treat them like a trusted man, woman, who has serious responsibility, they will rise to it. And they will take care of those who are causing the trouble. I also ran a business for 20 years. I hired 14-year-olds, and by 17, they were branch managers. They would come from school to the branch to make sure the 20-somethings had done their job. I believe in our students. I believe that we want to develop and graduate adults, and we start by treating them as adults. Thank you.
I wanted to compliment your journalism student who was here addressing us last time. He outlined the problem for us beautifully so that we were able to solicit the available people to give us the responses that we need. So I didn't think that you would need to outline the problem for us. Once again, we were familiar with it. Gary?
Brief comment on the opposite side of your experience. I apologize, I broke the rule last week. Got in my classroom with 45 students, and at the very beginning of class realized I brought the wrong video to the classroom. I left the classroom, went up to my office, and got the right video and came back down. Told the students to talk amongst yourselves. It seemed like it would have been extremely awkward to ask 45 students to stand up and leave the classroom so I could lock the door and get the video. That was going to take me 2 minutes to come back to. I remember when I was in school, a very different climate in which students were, there was a hierarchy in which we had students that were obviously not on the same level as the teachers, but there was still more of a peer support that I remember. I remember going to professors' houses for wine and cheese and having academic discussions. And somehow, I think you hit on a topic that we've gotten so paranoid that we're unwilling to raise our students back up to that peer level of academia, where they're going to learn from us, but at the same time, we see them as adults learning, not as minors in an elementary school classroom. I'll stop there.
Pat?
Yes, I'd like to weigh in as somebody who apparently for years violated district policy unknowingly by having a squad room that our students would use at all hours. I was not there all the time. I felt it was enough to spend 15 weekends a year with them without having to spend every evening with them as well. We never had any problems. It was never an issue. Students had a key to that room, no problem. Apparently, sometime over the years, situations have changed. My understanding and my suspicion is that a lot of it is based on litigation and concerns about that. And I understand the concerns, but I think we've also gone overboard in this direction. To the extent that there are legitimate concerns, there are probably ways of addressing them. Yes, it could happen in our forensic squad room that somebody's box of evidence falls on top of them and hurts them. That is a possibility. I suspect there are ways to have liability waivers in case something like that happens. It would be an easy task for those students to take that action. So if we're talking about student safety, I think there are ways around that that meet the needs of the district in terms of the law, but also meet the needs of our students. The other two arguments, though, that were raised are ones that I have serious doubts about, dealing with theft, and then alcohol, drug abuse, and sexual assault. And the reason I have reservations about those as legitimate reasons to deny students the opportunity to have these rooms or opportunities is because it flies in the face of the other part of that comment, saying that students have free access on those walk-through kind of spaces on it. So what we're saying is we're terrified that there may be drug use, alcohol abuse, or a sexual assault in the forensic squad room or the journalism newsroom, But the whole rest of the campus and the parking lots and everything, that's fine. We don't need to worry about it there. That just doesn't seem right. It seems to me I have more confidence about what will not take place in my forensic squad room versus what would not take place elsewhere. I know full well with my students there would have been hell to pay for them if there were drugs or alcohol in there. I can't control what people are doing elsewhere on campus. I don't think that's a real legitimate concern for stopping students from having this place. If that is such a serious problem, we need to be addressing it the whole campus, not just isolating it to student activities or theater or any of these other areas. To me, I don't see a strong justification for preventing students the opportunity to do these things. The other one was theft. All of this would assume then that theft comes from within that particular area, that they're stealing from their own newsroom, they're stealing from their squad room, etc. We never had anything in our squad room that was worth stealing. Maybe in journalism they do, but then you have the responsibility for the type of people that you have that you're allowing to have access to that. If it's the walkthrough kind of thing, most of the thefts that I'm aware of on campus, including the one who came into my office and stole things, have been in those public spaces. We had that situation a year ago where last year, where Melanie Navahani's office was broken into, and that was not related at all to spaces for students. This was public space. Somebody got in, and never happened in some of these other places. I know in athletics you've had problems, but that's a different kind of setup in terms of that. So I don't find the arguments that are being advanced against the students being really isolated to this as a rationale.
Before I recognize you, Bill, the Senate takes positions via motions and resolutions. Is there anyone that would like to offer up a motion that we would be able to forward potentially to Planning and Budget if it involves hiring of full-time staff, or to President's Advisory Council for consideration? Pat?
Yeah, this is obviously coming off the top of my head. I move that the Senate establish a committee to work with the administration for the development of a policy that would allow access to students in specialized programs that would not require the strict regulation of the line of sight policy that currently exists. That's the best I can do off the top of my head.
I'll second that. Okay, let's see how well I did with note-taking on this one. The motion is to establish a committee to work with administration to develop a policy regarding allowing access to students in specialized programs. I missed the last part of it.
Yeah, that's that wouldn't require line of sight.
That would not require.
Would not apply with the line of sight policy.
Okay.
It would not be constrained by the line of sight policy.
Constrained.
Constrained. That's constrained by line of sight policy. Okay. Now, as the maker of the motion, you have the first right to respond. Would you like to say anything more to it other than what you've already commented on?
This is just a way to get it moving so that some action can be taken, and I think we need to sit down and work out possible parameters of it, and that I'm hoping that that can be done. I mean, it may involve things such as, for example, what I was talking about, a waiver or some other kinds of aspects. I think that would need to be explored.
I'll recognize you now.
1 minute, because I'm sitting listening to this and we just lived it. And I am wired like Mr. Mercer. I want freedom. If I had to work in our district office on safety and management, be afraid of a lawsuit every day, I don't know that I'd want to come to work. That's not how I'm wired. I want to be free and let our students be free. On the other side, I understand the administrator's position 100%, because for the better part of the last 10 years, I'm ultimately responsible for our athletes, and there's 200 young men and women between 18 and 22. We travel. I'm as guilty as heck at times as giving my key to somebody and in my special way letting them know how quickly that will be back in my hand. I've done it. It's how we live sometimes, because we're out here, we know in these, I've been to the theater many times, that's how we live sometimes. but I get it. We just had an incident that I don't need to expand on. That could have been a problem, and ultimately cost some people the remainder of the eligibility of their athletic season, because kids do knucklehead things sometimes when given too much freedom. And we have an issue that we're going to solve in our area. That's been an issue for a while on locker rooms and team rooms. We're right in the middle of it. Man, I hate speaking because I don't know where I stand on this. I'm wired like you, but I get it. Things can happen if they have too much free time and too much space. And 99% of the time, everybody makes good choices, but the 1% of the time they don't can really bite us. And I do not like to wake up and worry about lawsuits, and do not. But I mean, when I say fresh, 2 days ago I was dealing with this issue. So stuff happens, you know, sometimes.
I want to address a couple of things that were said. First, I don't believe that I said that I was terrified. I don't come to school terrified. I'm not terrified. I have concerns, and I believe the concerns are legitimate concerns. I'm not speaking out of paranoia. I'm not speaking because I'm terrified. I'm speaking because when you hear that we haven't had incidents of violence, we haven't had incidents of theft, wrong. We have had incidents of sexual violence, specifically in the facilities that we are talking about. And to tell a young woman who has been sexually assaulted that statistically this is a really safe college, I would find quite unsatisfactory. I think that young lady and any other person at the college is entitled to know, what are you as an institution going to do to assure my safety and well-being? And any policy or agreement that we come to is going to have to take that into account. Theft. Students wouldn't steal their own equipment. Yes, they would. We've specifically had that. Students who are parts of programs who, given unsupervised access, have stolen thousands of dollars worth of that equipment. Yeah, it's happened. So I'm not talking about hypotheticals. I'm not talking from paranoia. I'm talking about real life experience. Now, I do want to let all of you know I was a classroom teacher, and I understand that I would be surprised if every one of us in this room, for expediency's sake, hasn't technically violated that idea. As Gary said, I need to run down and get my stuff. Yeah, I've done that. Get in the classroom, don't have chalk, I'll be right back, guys. I'm not going to dismiss them. Is that a technical violation? Yes. And is anybody going to get written up for it? Of course not. You all have to do what you need to do to make things work, and we all understand that. But the establishment of a policy that on the face of it puts students at risk, or substantial equipment that is worth substantial amounts of money at risk, simply isn't going to be acceptable. I'm happy to talk about ways that we can address the legitimate concerns, but as I said to the students, you've got deadlines, and I'm being told that you can't be there to meet your deadlines. Well, of course you can be. If we know when the deadlines are, let's provide the personnel necessary to do that. It's not 40 hours a week. If Associated Students wants the Associated Students Center to be open past 6 o'clock in the evening, seems to me that we need a couple of hours a day, 4 days a week. That's about 8 hours. Trust me, the college can afford that. So let's look at what the nature of the problem truly is, and I have no doubt we can come up with appropriate, legitimate solutions to those problems that do not inappropriately or unnecessarily expose students or staff to risk.
The motion that's on the floor would be to establish a committee that would work with administration. Is there anyone that would like to speak against the motion? Is there anyone else that would like to speak for the motion?
I think that if we just vote or just go along with what our president said, we haven't really looked at the whole problem. So I think the suggestion that we work with administration to try to resolve the whole thing is not anything against administration, but it's to help them try to get something that works for everybody. So I think it's a good motion we should pass.
Before I recognize Brian, is there anyone that would be interested in serving on this committee?
Oh, fantastic. Awesome. At least now we know we'll have people interested. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea for the reasons that both Pat and Jesse talked about for the larger issue here. I don't want it though to preclude any of the people from making the contacts with you, Dr. Simpson, individually to pick up those 8 hours if they need them or something like that, because it seems like there may very well be some easy ways for us to address some of those issues, and there may not be need for the larger work of the committee down the line, but there may be. So I don't think there's only reason to have both of them. I would like to say I'm glad that both Mike and Jim volunteered, because the thing that I would certainly recommend is that I'd also, I think, Bob, you should be on it, Robert, because the people, and I think maybe Pat, the people who are directly affected by this, who have expressed that, I know both of you have done that you should definitely be people who are looking into this. It doesn't affect me as much, because now I know I can go to the bathroom and I can go get my iPad, so that's cool. But I think the people who are directly affected by that are need to be represented.
So I'm not sure if we need some sort of timeline, that by a certain date a committee will be established. I don't know how to do that, if we need a whole different motion, or can we just add by, I don't know, the next meeting, or we can establish the committee or something like that.
Are you offering up an amendment?
I am offering up.
Fantastic.
If we create a committee, we can then task it with certain things. So it doesn't necessarily have to be spelled out, but if you want to, we can. But.
Would you like to add that as an amendment? What time frame would you like to get? By the next Senate meeting?
Well, in light of the holidays, we have one so by the next Senate meeting.
By the next Senate meeting, okay. So what is currently being offered as an amendment, we'll need a second on it, would amend Senator Gaynor's motion to establish a committee with the administration to develop a policy that would allow access for students in specialized programs that would not be constrained by the line of sight policy, be completed by the next Senate meeting? A draft by the next Senate meeting?
Which is a month from now, right?
Uh-huh.
Policy drafted by then?
No.
The Senate being appointed by then?
Yes.
That just the committee be established by the next Senate meeting. Okay. Is there a second for Tanya's amendment?
Second.
Okay. So.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Not probably. I don't even know Robert, let alone his rules.
But by the time Calvin, they look like Calvin rules.
It's no criticism at all, but if it takes a month to establish that committee, I need locker room coverage next week. I'm going to go talk to Bob. Okay.
Well, I was recommending, based on what you were saying, that in the meantime we would have, some ability to get some time.
Okay, so we have an amendment and a second. Would you like to speak to the merits of your amendment on the motion? Okay. Is there anyone that would like to speak against the amendment?
I think that would just be too long, draw things out, so I don't agree with that. That thought when she started was to say we'd have a draft by that time. That I would agree with, but to establish a committee by that time is just too long.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of the amendment? Then I will call for a vote on the amendment only, which is that the committee be established by the next Senate meeting. All those in favor of amending the motion that would add the committee would be established by the next Senate meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I have one nay and abstentions. Mark and Jayla. All right, so the amendment passes. We're back to the original motion as amended, which is Senator Gaynor's motion that we would establish a committee with the administration to develop a policy that would allow access for students in specialized programs that would not be constrained by the line of sight policy, and this committee would be established by the next Senate meeting.
Yeah, because we are off next time, so we don't meet again for a month. Typically, because this is a committee, the Senate would have to approve the appointments, and so that would mean nothing could really be done until the next meeting. So I would like to offer an amendment to the motion that would authorize the president to appoint any individuals who volunteer to this committee and allow them to begin meeting as soon as there is a sufficiently sized committee to begin work on it.
So we are offering an amendment that says I get to appoint people to this committee that needs to be established by the next Senate meeting. Is there a second?
A second.
Would you like to speak to the merits of the amendment?
Yeah, I'd hate to see us have to wait to do anything at all on this for another month, which under our other process, this would allow people, we've already got ideas. It is seldom that we turn down a presidential nominee. Anyway, I can't imagine us doing it on this situation. Let's get moving and start doing something on this.
Anyone speak? Anyone speak in opposition to my appointment of the committee members?
You found Robert.
Very well then. All those in favor of the amendment that would allow me to appoint members to this committee, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very well. Back to the main motion then, which is that we would establish a committee with the administration to develop a policy that would allow access for students in specialized programs that would not be constrained by line of sight policy, with this committee to be established by the next Senate meeting upon my appointment of its members. Anyone else to speak in favor or against it?
I'm sorry, can you read it again?
Sure, I'll do that for you. So what you are now voting on, since there are no more people wishing of debate, that we establish a committee with the administration to develop a policy that would allow access for students in specialized programs that would not be constrained by the line of sight policy to be established by the next Senate meeting upon my appointment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Fantastic, the motion carries. Now, I would personally like to appoint Jim Hormel, Michael Clyde, Gary Zager, and Robert Mercer to this committee to work. Is there a motion that would support my appointment?
So moved. We just voted that we don't need that.
I know, but I feel better knowing that all of you folks are not all of a sudden going to say, I'm not available.
The shroud of democracy.
I did.
Just a question.
She's blocking.
Is that exclusive to those individuals, or because my motion would allow you to appoint others later if you had? So this would just confirm those individuals, but if there are others who may wish to come forward, I think that might not be a bad idea.
Can I start with these four and then call for others who may be interested?
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So if we phrase it that way, then you're still free to do more as opposed to these four, period.
Okay, so let me make sure that Michael, you would be available to serve. Jim, you would be available to serve. Gary, you would be available to serve. Mr. Mercer, you'd be available to serve. And
If I
anyone
can get out of the journalism room, yes, ma'am.
we'll have them in the journalism room. How's that?
I have a nice new office. Thank
See, so he can host the meetings as well. Okay, so my initial appointment will be for those four gentlemen, and then I will send out a call for any other additional interested faculty. Is that acceptable to the Senate?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you, folks. Now, the next item on the agenda, can I go to plenary?
No.
Okay, I was there anyway, so I hope you don't mind.
I move that the Senate approve funds to go and pay for your expenses at plenary.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Anyone want to speak in favor of the motion? Before that, thank you folks for coming in. We really appreciate you being here. Come again real soon. We bring food. You're welcome. All right, anyone in opposition to the motion that I can go to plenary? Oh, good. All those in favor then of allowing me to go to plenary, I'm there anyway. Any opposed? Oh, fantastic. Now, can I tell you? You folks should all be at plenary with me. It's a good time. It's in Irvine in the fall. It's in the north in the spring. So it is Irvine in the fall. But I would like to say one thing though about plenary, and it's the issue with line of sight. It was brought to our attention in one of the breakouts this morning that there are many faculty that are not aware that they may have minors on their roster in class. And we have an affirmative obligation that if a minor is abused or we suspect abuse, that we are mandated reporters. If you don't know who the minors are on your roster, How do you know when you're mandated to report? And this was one of the issues that was brought up in this morning's dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment session. And since it has such a strong bearing on the line of sight, it's just something that I hope the committee will consider. We do not specify what the age is of our students on our rosters, and we are mandated reporters for minors. So just something to be aware of, and I would hope the committee will consider it as you're deliberating what type of policy we should have.
Wouldn't the same level of responsibility apply whether they're 19 or 17?
No, we have a mandated obligation, which is a misdemeanor, if we do not report suspected abuse for minors.
They said supervision, though. The same level of supervision. We're not going to change our supervision policies because of age. We're just going to go and change our response if we suspect something.
However you decide to deal with it, I am just telling you what was reported at Senate.
That made my head go like
that. At the plenary.
The child abuse reporting laws in California say that upon suspicion, you're mandated to make a report. Okay, so that would change based on age. But as far as my role as a supervisor, supervising my students in the room, hopefully I'm offering the same level of protection and supervision to my adults as any minors that might be in the room. I'm not going to treat my minor students differently. I'm just going to report differently if I form suspicion.
That was one of the issues that was discussed, but because they are minors, there are certain topics of conversation that might be taking place in class that could potentially be inappropriate for their age level, which means you would also change your level of supervision. Would you allow profanity? Would you allow discussion of certain adult content areas? Those were issues that were being discussed. So just something to be aware of when the committee meets.
This is a good conversation, but I don't know that it falls in with this committee that we're forming now, because this is about line of sight supervision as opposed to this kind of supervision of minors applies to every classroom. And I know we have classes where minors are not allowed to enroll for that very reason, because we've decided there's no way we can take that information out of our curriculum. So, but I mean, in terms of mandatory reporting, I know that, but that's never been told to me. And you're right, there is no way. I don't know who the minors are in my class. So how would I know?
Take that David Mamet course out of
I'm just bringing the information,
No,
so
it's
it might
good,
be
but
something
that seems like something, that's a every classroom, whether they have line of sight or not, that's an every classroom situation to know, how do we do that if there's no information on our rosters who the minors are?
That first week you take roll, you say, is anybody who's not 18?
I know that in auditions, because on auditions, I make them tell me how old they are.
Right.
The one thing that I will say, and it was brought up during this discussion, is we have access to the student's date of birth through My Gateway when we pull up their personal information. So we know who's a minor and who's not if we go that extra step and click on their student personal information. So that would not be accurate to say we don't know who a minor is. We may not have looked to see.
It's something that maybe the entire faculty needs to be reminded of.
Yes.
For sure.
Dr. Simpson?
This phrase line of sight is being used, and I'm not sure where that's coming from. And I just want to be abundantly clear. When I'm talking about supervision of our instructional spaces, I'm not talking about you must be able to see every student at all times. So again, I've never used the phrase line of sight. The only place I know that used is when we're collecting apportionment for TBA lab classes. And there are very specific Title V guidelines for when we can and can't collect apportionment. But when we're talking about, for example, associated student access to the student center, Dave Okawa's office has a door on it. It doesn't have a window where he can see outside. But if Dave is in his office, I consider that to be supervision. He doesn't need to be able to see all the students. We have a college official present. The facility is available. He's there to take care of something that happens. So there is not a requirement that I be able to see everybody at all times. That's not a constraint under which we will be operating. That's not my concept of supervision.
I just want to clarify that, but you did say under Title V for laboratory classes.
That's the only place.
Well,
that I know.
that's what this is for us anyway. I know for it's for our crews.
Yeah. And we've dealt with that issue with photo because they have TBA hours and they have students who are in their TBA hours, but they're developing film. And so our interpretation of that, and I don't know if we were audited if it would stand scrutiny, but is that The instructor of record who meets minimum quals has to be present and available. Students have to be engaged in work that is not homework, and we need to have line of sight. Well, what's line of sight in that kind of a scenario? Reasonable, frequent, and appropriate interaction with the students. I interpret that as meeting that standard.
Well, that's been the only way we've been able to interpret it.
Exactly.
We can't see the whole thing.
Exactly so. And I just wanted to be clear about that. If anybody was under the misperception that that line of sight was coming from administration, or there was a requirement that has to be the case, that isn't true.
Bob, an example for us, like Manny's in his equipment room and someone's in the soccer team room, we're good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Mark, did you have a comment that you wanted to offer?
I did. I no longer want to offer it. No, like I'm bored with it now. Not this conversation. I'm bored with my comment. It was so 3 minutes ago.
I may be responsible for pushing that with putting on the agenda and stuff, but I know that also I'm a little bit upset that Robert Mercer left, because that came from him, and I believe came through Karen, was my understanding of it. But that's a whole telephone conversation that, you know.
The committee will find out.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but so I think I've been putting that out there because I've been using it in my stuff, so I'll stop.
All right. Our next agenda item is special reports. Associated students, what do you have to tell us?
So for associate students, we have a vacant position in our council, which is the vice president of student organizations. Also, part of the report is Frida is no longer going to be sitting on the committee for Academic Senate. However, our representative, Amanda Arrows, will be sitting on it from now on. Also, we've started a can drive, and we've put on little bins throughout campus and throughout each building on campus, and we're collecting cans, and then we'll eventually be making baskets with turkeys and handing them out again. It's kind of a thing we do every year, and that's it for my report.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. All right. United Faculty?
No report.
Okay. Staff development then. I am reading the email I received from Peggy Austin. She regrets that she's not able to be here. She doesn't have much of a report, but she wants to remind everyone that conference funding requests are due Friday at noon. That would be tomorrow. And she and Mary recently attended the CCC Professional Clearinghouse Summit last Friday. It was a brainstorming meeting about what should go into a professional development website that could be used by all of the colleges. And then she also is asking the question about resurrecting the faculty handbook. And I think that might be something the Staff Development Committee is going to be working on. So that is the Staff Development Report. Curriculum, wait, where's Mark? No. No, okay. All right. You betcha. Academic Senate Treasurer's Report.
No report.
Wow.
What did you do to your arm?
No report. I wonder.
I missed the top step and went headlong and fractured my wrist in a horrible enough way where I had to have surgery last Friday. And so now I have a big metal plate in there with a whole bunch of screws. The x-ray is really interesting and fascinating if you ever want to see it. And
now that wouldn't have happened if Richard Fee had been supervising you. It wouldn't have been an issue.
And I do want it on the record that had nothing to do with margaritas.
Hard cider.
In fact, yeah, see, this is healthy food is bad for you. I was handed an apple. And that distracted me as I turned to go back outside to work in my yard. And
it's like biblical, the apple always does it.
The only good thing I can say is it happened the day after I finished writing my sabbatical request. So at least all of that was done. Because now I type like this.
Well, thank you for your report. Cypress College Foundation.
Oh, yes. Last meeting I did not talk about that the Foundation Board did endorse Measure J. They did provide over 600 endorsements in the district, and so I just wanted to report on that. Pull for Cypress had 205 donors, which is for the third year in a row. For the third year in a row, they've had over 200 donors, so we're happy about that. Americana kickoff is on November 19th, which is this Wednesday, and the Americana Awards are going to be on February 28th, 2015.
February 28th for Americana. Thank you. Basic Skills Committee, Cherie sent an email to me telling me that her service as the co-chair of the BSI committee is coming to an end. I sent out a call for interested faculty members. Did you see that email? Fantastic. Now you can't say you didn't get it. Nobody responded to it though yet, so I'm waiting. We're hoping that we'll have someone that we can recommend for the BSI committee co-chair at our next Senate meeting. SLO, since you're Sarah.
I am Sarah, so I'm going to read for Sarah. I guess I'm reading as Sarah. The SLO committee is assisting programs in the completion of their PLO assessments. In addition, the SLO coordinator will hold outcome development sessions in the TLC during the rest of the semester. These sessions are for track that training, SLO or PLO cycle development, and for any outcome related questions. An email will be sent to all faculty once the dates for these sessions are confirmed.
Very good. Thank you very much. Program review and department planning. The report came to me from Kathleen Ryland. The Program Review Committee heard presentations from the following department representatives on November 3rd. Air conditioning and refrigeration was presented by Doug Saladay. Ethnic Studies presented by Danny Lynn. ESL by Kathy Llanos, Deborah McPherson, Samantha Simmons, and Kathy Wada. They look forward to hearing from the following program representatives on November 17th, which would be Monday. Mortuary Science will be presented by Glenn Bauer. Biology by Adele Rajab. I can't pronounce that one. Rajab. Okay, got it right the first time. Nursing by Carol Harvey and Denise Bernstein. And then CIS by our own Jesse Saldana. Very good. And then the committee will be compiling a summary of best practices, issues, and suggestions that come out of the process to present to the senators for review in the spring. So that's program review and department planning. District Council on Budget and Facilities, we meet on Monday, so there's no report on that one, which takes us to the end of our special reports and right into the President's report. Dr. Simpson already mentioned what happened at the Board of Trustees meeting. So let me back up just a few steps. Coming out of Senate, you may recall at our last Senate meeting, we endorsed putting forward the mortuary science proposal for the baccalaureate pilot. It went to DCCC, the District Committee Curriculum Coordinating Committee, and last Friday they had a special telephone, I guess we would call it teleconference, where both the Fullerton proposal and the Cypress proposal were presented and discussed. We have the Fullerton proposal and the Cypress proposal.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously, 68-1. The Fullerton College proposal was a Bachelor's of Science degree in Law Enforcement Supervision, and the Cypress College proposal ended up with plenty of pages of information that supported their request for mortuary science, which you had previously heard. It just provided all the supporting material. At the end of that 2-hour conversation, it was voted 4-3-1. 4 in favor of Fullerton's proposal, 3 in favor of Cypress's proposal, and 1 abstention. The Board of Trustees on Tuesday night was asked to support the recommendation of DCCC, to which Trustee Latinen actually made a motion that they not follow the recommendation of DCCC, but support the Cypress College proposal. And the Board of Trustees decided to forward the Cypress College proposal over the recommendation of DCCC And I would say to the angst of Fullerton, who cited board policy that says they're supposed to rely primarily on faculty because this is a curriculum issue, and Dr. Daphne mentioned that these are extraordinary circumstances to which the board could use it as a recommendation but would not be bound to follow it. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. They are forwarding it. I will tell you, it was announced at lunch today during plenary. Dr. Pam Walker, who is the vice chancellor at the state who was asking for the proposals to be submitted yesterday, mentioned that there were more than 30 proposals that were received yesterday. So our program would be competing with at least 30 other proposals, and they're only selecting 15. So there's some work. Yeah, there's some work that needs to be done. The Board of Governors is putting out, they said by next Friday, the original requests for proposals that would have all of the items in it that we would need to submit to them. So it's moving along. It's moving along.
Jolena, may
yes, sir.
I wanted you to speak first to that because it was such a momentous event for the college. And I just wanted to say I couldn't have been prouder of the mortuary science faculty members, the mortuary science students, and I want to emphasize how critically important it was that the proposal from the outset for mortuary science was a proposal of the whole, and that at every board meeting, faculty members and students were present. We had advisory committee member meetings in support. That support mattered. But I do, again, while I'm complimenting the mortuary science program, it's going to be a lot of work. There's no guarantee that we will be one of the 15 selected, but the college will dedicate all of its resources to seeing that, if we're able to do so, that it will happen. I think it would be a real feather in our cap to be one of the 15 pilot programs with a bachelor's degree program. I wanted to talk again just a little bit about the fact that the board didn't follow the recommendation, because again, that is of very great significance, and the fact that we prevail doesn't mean that it's not a significant issue. Put ourselves on the other side of the coin and think how we would feel, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I believe it was an appropriate decision. One of the disqualifying factors for programs submitting to be considered is that you cannot duplicate a program that exists at the Cal States or the UCs. The Fullerton College proposal is entitled Law Enforcement Supervision. There are 9 Cal States that have criminal justice bachelor's degrees. 2 of those are criminal justice administration. And I articulated this at the meeting on Friday, at the teleconference on Friday. I said so again at the board meeting. I believe that will be disqualifying. And if this district is interested in having a bachelor's degree program, there's only one that's viable, and it is mortuary science. Now, Fullerton will argue that in their one-page concept paper that they were truly unique, that they had fleshed out parts of law enforcement that were different. And that may be the case, and I don't want to argue that it wasn't the case. It was certainly not clear to me, and I believe that was a significant factor that weighed in and was a rationale justification for the trustees not to primarily rely on that recommendation. I believe in the absence of that, it may not have gone that way, but this is only the second time in my career here since AB 1725 was adopted that the trustees have not acted in accord with the recommendation of the Senate. So this is not something that they set aside lightly, but you should expect when you have your joint meeting with United Faculty and the Senate, this will be a topic of conversation because Fullerton is not going to simply go quietly into the night. But I believe, again, that there was very significant justification for what the board did, but we would all want to be cautious about that setting a precedent for this becoming a more frequent happenstance.
Question, do we know more about why the DCCC chose that one? I mean, it sounds like everybody's so impressed by the presentation, mortuary science, the War and Peace presentation they turned in, like 1,000 pages, and everybody.
It was the Odyssey.
Okay, the Odyssey, fair enough. It was in various types of meter. And more to the point, the problems potentially with the qualifications of Fullerton. Why did they choose Fullerton? Is there something weird going on we don't know about?
No, not at all. In fact, let me give to you the numbers that were weighing heavily on the decision. According to the Fullerton proposal, we believe student success and completion rates for a program are best projected using data available that reveals the vitality of the program/department. Using a 5-year average over a range beginning with the 2009-2010 school year, the department's key performance indicator data reveal that during the period, the program supported an average of 888 majors, with a retention rate in courses of 86% and a success rate of 76%. They believed that they would be able to substantiate a much greater proportion of student benefit than the mortuary science program could. And I'll be the first to admit, we do not have 888 majors in mortuary science. So when they were looking at the numbers, that was one of their primary concerns, is what would be the biggest benefit to the students and the community, and how scalable, if it were successful, how many other programs could adopt the baccalaureate in law enforcement supervision and run with it. Mortuary science can only be duplicated in one other campus, and that's our sister campus in the north. It's an expensive program to run. That's why we don't have 50 different community colleges that are offering it, because it's a super expensive program. So they were looking at those items, primarily the number of students that would benefit from it, and how scalable it would be after the pilot to other programs. Could it be duplicated at other community colleges? So that was weighing heavily on their decision making. But if I just make a side note, the votes were really Cypress proposal voted by Cypress reps, Fullerton proposal voted by Fullerton reps, and there was one person that voted neither from Fullerton nor Cypress on the Fullerton side. So.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask how the vote broke down, because I rather suspected that was it. And it's something that I want to raise an issue on, because I think it's something that to be very cautious about in any area. There is a tendency for us to always look at things from a parochial perspective in terms of what's best for Cypress or what's best for Fullerton, as opposed to on something like this, which is a district action that is going to be taken. And I think it takes a lot for people sometimes to step away from their own parochial interests, but it needs to be done. I have the same concern sometimes about what can happen here in the Senate, where people are only voting, this is what my division wants or needs, as opposed to what is good for the campus as a whole. They're not always the same. And it struck me, for example, I was talking to some of our people, our own staff, about Measure J a week or so ago, who I think they may have voted for it, but it was, well, yeah, but we're not going to get anything out of it in our division, so therefore it's not important. And to me, that's that ultimate in parochialism, and I worry about this. And I think any of us serving on those district-wide committees need to think beyond just, believe me, I would much prefer almost everything from Cypress over Fullerton, but I don't want to go in with that preset. I think what language arts does is important, but I don't want to go in the preset that everything has to be mandated by this. I don't want to base my votes on, is my area going to get something out of it? And I think we need to remind ourselves every so often that we're part of something much bigger than just our own narrow area. And that's why I was worried about how the vote went on DCCC, and it went exactly what I expected it to be. And that's unfortunate, I think.
So that...
Fullerton should have seen that it should have gone 6-0 for us.
I will tell you that was one comment that one of the Board of Trustees members made is, why wasn't it 8-0? There were 8 voting members, why wasn't it 8-0? And they hypothesized that it may have been a politically minded decision where they aligned with a particular constituency. That pretty much sums up the board meeting in a nutshell. How about something more exciting? If you haven't heard, we will be hiring 18 brand spanking new tenure track faculty members. There is a total that was announced of 56 new full-time faculty members that are coming to the district. 4 will be going to the School of Continuing Education, 34 to Fullerton, and 18 to Cypress. Of the
34 to Fullerton?
4 to School of Continuing Ed, 34 to Fullerton. And you might look at that number and say, wait, 18 to Cypress, 34 to Fullerton, why is that so off? Because they had a significant number of retirees, more so than Cypress has had. So when they were looking at the total proportion of faculty versus FTS, they were looking at what does Fullerton have in terms of total faculty, what does Cypress have in terms of total faculty. And they believe that we could anticipate about the same number of hires for 2015, 2016. So this will be, no, 2016, 2017. So this set of hiring will be to start 2015, 2016, and then a similar number for 2016, 2017. With that being said, folks, I can't even begin to tell you how important it will be to have a permanent placed staff development coordinator for that new faculty institute that is done to onboard our new faculty hires. So that staff development will come back to us again in terms of finding criteria that we can agree on to select the next staff development coordinator. But if you haven't heard, the faculty will be hired in radiologic technology, music will have 2, geology, automotive technology, philosophy. Counseling will end up with 3 total if you count the DSPS counselor that's funded out of categorical. Health information technology, chemistry, an English position designated for the Puente program, a forensic director, 2 for math, 1 for physical education, non-coaching kinesiology, GIS, geography, and 1 for dental assisting. So those are the 18 positions that are coming to Cypress College. So that's good news. We're hiring. That's very good news. We're also hiring an interim chancellor. They do not believe that they'll be able to find a acceptable candidate in the period of time from the end of February to the end of June. They're anticipating an interim for that period of time. So something that didn't make it on the agenda, but we need a representative from our academic senate to serve on the screening committee. We will not be meeting before the screening committee meets, so we must make this appointment today. The first meeting will be Thursday, December 4th at 2 o'clock. I'm going to ask, is there anyone on our academic senate that would be interested in serving on that screening committee? And if you haven't served on a district hiring committee, it can be very time intensive. And I was hoping that maybe it would be either our past president or our past president who would be familiar with the screening process and understand the workload that they would be committing to.
I have December 4th free, but starting the week afterwards, I start ramping up for my stem cell transplant. And most of December, all the way until January 1st, the first week of January, I'll be preparing for that and then having the transplant the first week of January. So I don't know if I'll be available for any other meetings other than December 4th. So I don't know if I'm the right person.
I guarantee you should not talk to your nurse there. Stay home.
Yeah.
No, you want to stay home. Don't touch it.
I could do it, but to tell the truth, I'm not your best person.
Okay.
Because I'm probably not going to have to live with that chancellor as long as many of the other people around here are. I mean, I'm not announcing my retirement so that you can get another appointment. But in all likelihood, I mean, I'm hoping I'm not going to be here for another 20 years. My goal has always been to die in the classroom. But I've always said it has to be a class I hate. Because that way I go out doing what I love and it'll traumatize those little guys for the rest of their lives. So I'm not planning on doing it, but I really think it is better if somebody who is deeply invested for a number of years has a role in that because of the impact on it. I mean, I could do it if nobody else does, but I'm not your best person.
Is there any other member of the Senate?
We need to confirm with Irma Ramos who will be serving on this. And I will tell you that being part of a screening committee for a district level position is very different than the type of screening that you may have been on for a faculty position for this campus. It is a room with at least 15, if not 17 people, and it is moderated by professional consultants. It is the Community College Search Services. So there is a professional company that comes in for these types of recruitment. So it's a totally different experience. I will tell you, it's a phenomenal learning experience, and I would encourage all senators to participate. But I need to give her a name, and we don't meet again.
What's the commitment beyond that?
It does not technically have to be a senator, but because this person will be working with the Senate, we regularly meet with the chancellor. So it's normally someone who sits on the Senate who is going to be helping select the chancellor because we work so closely with them, but it does not have to be a senator. I'm more than happy to send out a call for any interested faculty, but then you would have to rely on my appointment because we won't be meeting again to confirm it. So I'd rather have the discussion here now with somebody who is currently sitting on the Senate that would be interested in this position. Now, mind you, there will be other groups that will be looking for faculty to sit as well. So Academic Senate will have people to put on that committee, United Faculty will, Adjunct Faculty United may as well, CSEA will, DMA will have representatives. Like I said, it's a pretty big committee. So,
can you do it?
See, because I can do that day, but I don't know, what's the commitment going forward to that? That's one of my problems with that.
I will only tell you from my past experience, it ended up being at least 8 meetings, each meeting being at least 2 hours, and that's not part of the interview time. That was just setting calendars.
You're trying to sell this position.
Yeah, I'm not doing a very good job.
Start over again.
Yeah. Like, this one's, yeah, because of the importance of this and the fact that whoever it will be as our next chancellor will be working very close with the Senate president and past president and president-elect, I would hope it would be someone who aspires to a leadership position within the Senate. So.
Like Brian.
I'll take any name right about now.
I can do that meeting.
I would nominate myself, but I am not an acting senator. I'm, sitting for I can nominate Becky, I guess, huh? No. Or Brenda, who's not here. But I don't know whether or not that would be appropriate. That's what I'm saying.
I'll entertain any interest, and I didn't want to usurp UF putting you on the committee, so.
I can do that meeting. I'm just concerned about the second.
This is the first time I've been involved in this position, where I actually have the hat of where I'm your vice president of United Faculty, and I also am involved, and I want to be involved. Because I'm going to be working with the man, so I would like to be that, or the woman. Oh. Well, you know what? I use that generally because I'm an oldie but goodie. You got to excuse some of that.
Is there a sense that, the time frame on this, there's going to be meetings during our holiday break?
They do not.
They do not recognize.
Right. So the last time I served on it, I served during what you folks would consider the semester break. I don't consider myself having a semester break because I'm always on campus. Yeah.
It might be paid, right? It might be paid.
Absolutely. If you're working outside of the constraints of your contract, you could ask.
You get paid. You do get paid.
No, you don't. You better check.
Why not? Julian?
Yes, sir.
I want to just raise the issue that on the district committees that I've sat on when I was president, this Fullerton Faculty Senate president and the School of Continuing Education president were always on those committees. And I think that there's something that adds an element of prestige if you were on the committee. There's something about saying, on the go-around, who are you? I'm the Cypress College Academic Senate President. There's something that goes with that.
You know what equally sounds good? I am the Academic Senate past president. I am the Academic Senate president-elect. So anyone who aspires to a leadership position in our Academic Senate would be a perfect candidate to put on this. But I know that when no one else steps forward, I end up being there because y'all stepped back. So.
I'm not volunteering, but I am saying that I think, although Pat's concerns are true, that she may not be living with this chancellor for very long, she is very good at soliciting the opinions and feedback from the constituency and the campus at large. So I would have confidence that that she would just represent who she's supposed to represent. So I don't know if she wants to hear that from me, but I think she would be great also, and I think you would be great too.
And Jolene, I just want to say, and maybe you're thinking some of us are reticent about it, but I know, and we're hiring 2 math faculty. I'm going to be very busy on that committee. I can't spread myself to another hiring committee. I'm going to be reading so many applications, I'll end up hiring somebody for chancellor in the math department or something. I can't do it. So I don't want you to think, and there are others, many hirings are going on, and that might be people's holding back. So I just don't want you to feel alone on this, is what I'm saying. It's like people might be holding back because they know, I know personally me, I will be reading 300 applications in the math department. That's what we get. We don't get 30. We get 300 that we have to grade every one of those. So I'm going to be busy from now until through May, and then I could help.
And I don't believe it would only be the math department, because many times you bring in faculty from other departments to sit on those hiring committees. So
mostly it's us, but and almost my entire department serves on our hiring committees. We're pretty great about that. So I just wanted to, nobody's just running away from you. It's just some of us are very busy with our own hiring committees at this time.
And that's going to be a situation for all of us. So
why don't we all go?
Okay, is there anyone?
We'll figure it out.
Send out a call? Okay.
We'll figure it
so
out.
I'll send out a call for.
We know that.
She flinched?
She's flinching.
We guilted her into it.
But I'm not opposed to you sending out a call, and if nobody else steps forward, I'm comfortable, because we have people who have served recently on the Senate, may not be serving now, but would be interested in everything, and because our hiring committee is not going to be as bogged down. There aren't that many people who want to be directors of forensics. But I've got that too, and for the other concerns, and I understand it, and I'm willing, if nobody else does, but I'd like you to take a shot at seeing if there is somebody else.
Okay, so if I do send out a call, what would the parameters be that you would accept as the terms of my appointment? Do you want it to be a full-time faculty member who is serving on it?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want it someone who has had Senate experience?
Preferred.
Okay. Are there any other items that you would like me to consider when the numerous responses to this call flood my inbox?
Perhaps preferred experience doing it.
Okay. Okay.
I would also add any position of leadership of any sort, a department coordinator, served on various hiring committees, anything like that.
Okay. I will tell you the one thing the district was most concerned about is whether or not they had been through their EEO training recently, because that's one of the criteria. If they haven't been on a hiring committee within the last 2 years, they're not up to date and current with their EEO training, and that becomes another issue. Okay. Okay.
You'll get it.
I hope. So I'll send out a call, and I'll report back at the next Senate meeting who the appointment is. Because by then they will have had their first meeting, and who knows? Maybe that person will say, I'm sorry, but their meeting schedule is too cumbersome for their schedule. Campus Diversity Committee, I sent out a call, received nothing back regarding people who were interested in campus diversity. And I am still looking for someone, Gary, District Instructional Effectiveness Coordinating Committee, Gary, that would be interested in continuing to serve Gary. So
now that I have Mondays free, I can go, but I'm on campus though, right up until 2 o'clock. So I'll always be arriving there a little bit late. But I can fill that spot in for you if you don't mind someone going late each rest of the meetings for the rest of this semester.
Okay. There are, lucky for us, they canceled Monday's meeting. So there's only one meeting that will take place this semester.
We'll try to get them to cancel that one too, Gary.
I am going in lieu of Joe Gallo, and we have 2 positions on this committee. So. Also looking for another person to serve on the District Technology Coordinating Council. Last time we appointed one, they still have another one that needs to be appointed to that. We've got a lot of committee work, folks, a lot of committee work. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Letter B, Distance Ed Distance Ed Coordinator position. Senate will discuss the vacant DE Coordinator position. No, we won't. It's not vacant anymore. You received the announcement, everyone, that we have had a placement of a temporary Distance Ed Coordinator until we can find a full-time faculty member willing to step up to the DE Coordinator position. We needed to create a Band-Aid so that we would be able to get our course shells available for the spring up and running before our holiday break. So you saw the announcement that came out from Dr. Donnelly regarding, what is her name? Oh, shucks. I had it here. Oh, okay. Her name is Monica Jackson, and she has experience in DE coordination as a DE instructor from 2 prior assignments at the university level. She is now taking care of all of our DE issues, so we contact her. We still need to find a permanent faculty DE coordinator, though, so we're going to have a discussion about how we might want to modify the job description for the DE coordinator and take out the technology components so that maybe someone else on a classified level would take care of the technology components, and this would be more along the lines of instructional design. Jesse, did you have a comment that you wanted to make?
Is that person being hired for temporary time?
It's a project manager, special projects position. So technically speaking, until June 30th, though it can be extended. So there is a backup plan if we don't get someone who's willing to step up to it. And this can continue to be extended. And what was mentioned to me by Dr. Donnelly is this same type of position with the same type of special projects project manager has been going on for 15 years at Fullerton. So we have the opportunity to have that position filled by someone who is not a full-time faculty member. I do not suggest we use that option. I hope that we can find someone from our faculty who would be willing to coordinate our DE program. So that leads us to letter C. Craig, it's you. Standards for district state mandates.
All right. I've identified a couple of problems that I was hoping that the Senate could at least start a discussion on. I'm not expecting to come to any kind of conclusion today, but the 2 that I want to bring up are related. The first one is that the Senate is asked to receive information on an issue, discuss it, formulate an opinion on it, and pass a resolution or some other official decision all in the same meeting. These expectations come usually from outside of the Senate. Could be Cypress College administration, could be the district, could be the state. Examples of this would be like the DE coordinator issue, the bachelor's degree pilot program, the chancellor position today, where it's basically, hey, this is something that has to happen right now. And the result of that is that the Senate kind of legislates from the hip. We formulate resolutions or create policies, we discuss it or pass it without the Senate members really having a clear idea of what they're voting on in some cases, having a clear idea about the issue before them, and certainly not having the time to chew on that idea and really think it through. And you know, that's unfortunate because it seems that outside of the Senate, other parts of the district give their issues full consideration. When it comes to us, though, it's quick, now, we need it done today. And that results in some, what I feel are hasty decisions, and some decisions where we might be considering the immediate ramifications, but not necessarily the long-term ramifications of our decisions. And I think with additional time, we can really see where our decisions are going to lead to, and we'll make smarter decisions as a group. So there are many ways that we can address this, but one would be to do something like creating a bylaw that mandates that discussions of an issue regarding a new policy or a resolution, and then the vote on that policy or resolution, have to take place in different Senate meetings. Unless we vote as a group to say, okay, we're all on the same page here, this is a no-brainer, we don't need to chew on this, we don't need to think on this, let's do this right now, fine, great, okay? But there's an awful lot of stuff that, I get the feeling, I've had the feeling in several meetings where a decision's being jammed down our throat. We have to make that decision right now. And I don't think that people are comfortable with the process. And I think we control the pace of the Senate. It should not be dictated to us from outside this room. We should control that pace. And how we get to that is really where I want the discussion to go, because I think that idea of a bylaw is just one of a couple of different options that we have. But that's my feeling. I think that we should take action on that, because I really think that we're being taken advantage of by people outside of this room, where things are given to us and it's, let's do this right now, and that doesn't give a due process. So I have a major concern with that. Second problem, and this is related to the first, is the Senate meetings can sometimes be dominated by information presentation instead of discussion, debate, and action. Both senators and visitors have presented information in Senate meetings that could have been better presented to the Senate in written form for their consideration. For example, when we were handed proposals for the bachelor's pilot programs, we were handed stacks of paper from not from mortuary science, but from the other programs. We were handed that information in Senate, and we're discussing and debating the merits of those programs while we have stacks of paper that we're supposed to be considering in the process of making those decisions. Now, thankfully, that didn't really impact the decision, because the other programs got out of the way of mortuary science. But if we're to make smart decisions, and if people have all this stuff that they want us to look at, we need to look at it ahead of time. Now, that results in us taking up time in Senate to do things that we honestly should be doing on our own time. We should be getting stuff a week ahead of time or the Friday before a meeting, and we should all be reading through this stuff so that when we show up here, it's not information presentation. It's like my lectures. I want my students to come in having read the chapter, so that I don't go over the chapter in class. We start discussing and moving off of that. So I think that contributes to kind of knee-jerk reactions. Someone comes in and says something, there's a whole stack of information that we should be reading, but we listen to the one or two things that they say, and then we make a decision based on that. So I think that making decisions on quick glances at material is not the way we should be going about our business. Now, there's a couple ways that we can fix that. I mean, we could talk about limiting the presentation of information to a specific time limit, and telling people that when they have business at Senate, if you're presenting information, you have 5 minutes or you have 10 minutes. And if what you want to say is going to take more than 5 minutes, put it down on paper and give it to us ahead of time. And we can make that clear in terms of how we interact with the rest of the college community, and say, hey, if you're coming to Senate and you have all this stuff, give it to us ahead of time. I just have a problem with with the way that we are going about our business, and I think that we have ceded control of the pace of Senate to people outside of the room. And I don't think that's healthy for the Senate, and I don't think that's good in terms of our decision-making process. And I'm looking for solutions. I've offered a couple of ideas, but I'm really interested in finding out if that's just my impression and you guys are not on board with that, or if you guys get the same impression but you think that there are other ways for us to address it. So again, I'm not trying to come up with a solution today, but I think it's a conversation that I was hoping to at least start today and get some ideas from you guys in terms of how do we move forward? How do we make the Senate more nimble when it needs to be more nimble, and more deliberate when it needs to be more deliberate? Because I get the feeling that we're not controlling that pace, other people are, and we need to fix that.
Before I recognize anyone, I want to let you know the Board of Trustees, specifically President Brown, felt the exact same way on Tuesday night when he was told, by the way, we've got to turn this in tomorrow. You've got to make a decision tonight on which baccalaureate program. So he went to the Senate presidents and he said, how would the faculty feel if we decided not to forward either of them because we haven't had enough time to reflect on the proposals? Wow, yeah. And to that, Dr. Daphne said, okay, it'll just be another 6 years, but you'll have all the time you need. You know, we could participate the next time. But it is something that is being felt throughout the district. So I appreciate you bringing it up, and I almost feel like you were at the Area D meeting a couple weeks ago when other senates were saying the exact same thing about the triple SP plans and the student equity plans. And there were a couple of senates who said, you know what, we decided not to sign off on it because it had not had a first reading, it had not had a second reading, it had not been fully vetted. They decided not to sign off on it, and the peril being the money.
Is it really shared governance if you have a gun to your head? Is the point I'm making.
Yeah. Did you want to comment?
Well, yeah, because a lot of things that you were mentioning are actually kind of already taken into consideration. It's a matter of us meeting that practice. And actually, some things are covered by Brown, not even our bylaws or by anything else. I mean, particularly this first read thing. We're actually supposed to be doing that now. And we do in some ways. I mean, there's some stuff that we have made with the D where we were given information well in advance, but I don't know if we were given the urgency of the discussion about it well in advance. I mean, there was stuff that we had, but I absolutely share the idea of sometimes being forced to have that gun to our head. But it is some things that I think exist already that we actually just need to fine tune and hold people to. There's lots of stuff in terms of controlling the pace of things here, of how we do things here, that we certainly have control over. But you're talking about that business that comes to us and being able to handle it in a timely manner. There are instances, of course, where we get blindsided because that's just the way those things go. But I also get frustrated by that as an excuse. How come we can't see that stuff sometimes more further out? And have the discussions that are preliminary discussions be more than that? Because we could have actually hit the ground running with the BA stuff because we were talking about it before, but we were waiting for a confirmation as opposed to sort of going under the idea of, well, what if this happens? And if they make the decision, can we be ready to go? So I think that there is some of our own processes that we need to be a little bit more dedicated to and committed to, so that we can also say we haven't had enough time to do this. We understand the ramifications that might come, but we are going to stand on the fact that we need more time.
Would these be things that could be addressed by the bylaws committee?
He had actually asked about that, and it's something that I was going to mention. So.
If I wanted to effectively mute the Senate, I would do exactly what has been done to us by people outside of this room, whether deliberately or just through happenstance. Wait until the last minute to spring something on Senate and say, oh, by the way, this has to be done right now. And it happens with alarming frequency. And I'm going, I haven't been part of Senate very long, but I was here last year to a lot of the meetings, and the same thing was happening then. I think it's just, as a group, we might want to push back a little bit and say, look, you want shared governance, you want us to be part of the process. That process has to be also on our terms. And I just think that's a way for us to kind of make smarter decisions, I think.
I wanted to comment about the concept of it. I think one of the things we have to be very sensitive to are the state guidelines and the state deadlines that are really drop-dead deadlines. And for example, with the SSSP or student equity, we did have shared governance in that there were faculty appointments, Senate appointments to those committees. And although the approval, came late or close to the deadlines, there were faculty involved in that whole process. Also with the SSSP, that plan was sent out to all users, so not necessarily just to Senate, but to all users with the, any feedback by this date. So I don't know how many people gave feedback or not, but I went through the whole document and gave feedback, and so I think sometimes it doesn't come specifically through Senate that we have opportunity for feedback. It comes through all users, and I think it's our responsibility to read those all user things that are asking for feedback so that when they come to Senate, I think for the most part they're saying we've vetted it. And I think at least with those two plans I can say they were vetted. I don't know about all the other things that have come up, and I've seen, rush, but I think we have to be very, very sensitive because these state deadlines are drop-dead deadlines.
I know that I tell you folks that I am going to be very appreciative of your time. Would you like to continue this discussion, or would you like to adjourn and we will pick this discussion up next time? Because we are coming up on the 5 o'clock hour.
Before we adjourn, can I ask, is there anything left on the agenda that is absolute must do today?
I moved those up all the way to the top. I know that letter D is supposed to be Del Craig. He is not with us.
All right.
I don't know if the bylaws committee has a report for us.
I can pass over that. I would like to ask the Senate to do something that I would have done anyway. I just want to cross my T's and dot my I's. And it has to do with how we're posting some stuff on the Senate website, and it has to do with minutes. And actually, Kathy, I'm really glad you're here because I'm trying to get your public commentary put in a place on there. There are structural problems with our web editor that is not allowing Z to very easily create a sub-page for every one of our minutes, which is what we would need. So the easiest solution right now is for me to simply copy and cut and paste all of the public commentary documents and put them at the end of the minutes as extra documents. Just put them into the minutes, and then that document can be set up onto the web. I just can't put I have to attach it, like make it part of the document. So when the actual minutes end, the next page becomes whatever we're putting into it. It's at least what we can do until there's some place to put it, because there's really no place to put the attachments that people have for public commentary. There's one that's from May that's sitting there, but there's another even from September that I haven't been able to literally attach in some way that's easy because of the web editor, the actual constraints of the web editor. So what I wanted to do, and unless there's a better way, what I wanted to do was simply pull it off, put those things into them, and then put them back onto the agenda or back onto the website. I'm not doing anything to change what's in the minutes. I'm just adding something to the end of them in one document. If anybody's got a problem with that, I don't know if there's an issue with it. But it just at least puts them up there and solves our temporary issue. Because we'd kind of have to create a subpage for every single one, and if we didn't have something to put in there, that becomes problematic, just in the construction of it. So I've been trying to figure out how to do that. And it just seems like cutting and pasting it into them is what I would do, but I don't know if that's kosher, honestly. Yeah.
I think it's fine to append as long as in the minutes it references an appendix where you could go and check those additional items out.
Okay.
Yeah, so every item should have an appendix number, that's all.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Just put that at the end of anything that we would have that's additional information. Okay. It would help then if anybody could give me those things electronically, of course, which would make cutting and pasting easier if I had that to work.
Okay, I'm going back to Craig's comments, and I totally appreciate everything that you've said. I agree with everything. I just, some points that you and I have even talked about, I've talked about with Brian. I think also in terms of efficiency, if a committee is coming to present something like student equity or the SSSP, if people have a major problem, I think it would be efficient plus fair to that committee to send them a heads up that you have these concerns. That way they can address them when they come and speak before us, plus it's time saving because they're not on the spot trying to think, let me address your concerns. If they know about those concerns ahead of time, they could prepare and say, oh, you have these concerns, this is, let me address those.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So,
Just
since
a thought.
everyone's still sitting here, I'm guessing that this conversation is okay to continue, and we're, okay, Jesse.
I just want to say on Craig's comments that part of the thing might be, besides the bylaws laying things out, is a call for agenda. When you do that, if someone wants to put something on and they say it's going to be more than a minute or two, that they ought to put something in writing out to us at the same time so we can review it before we come here. So it makes the responsibility of doing that to the person who added to the agenda.
We
To
have
go out
some,
with the agenda ahead of it, so you have it subject to ours.
we have some work to do on Craig's issues, because I will tell you, only from my personal point of view, I have been hit up 3 times this semester to sign something that I do not believe came through Senate, but came through a subcommittee of the Senate. So it wasn't presented to the Senate, but it came through a subcommittee of the Senate to which they asked for the Academic Senate's president's signature on it. They were curriculum issues that were being submitted to the state. They were certificates. And I don't know that that was presented to the Senate, through Mark's report. So I'm guessing that it was fully vetted through the curriculum committee because they were certificates that were going up to the state. But I don't feel comfortable signing those, and I wouldn't think that anyone in this position would feel comfortable signing those unless it had been presented to the Senate. So there are some significant issues that we're going to have to address with this particular item. And hopefully the bylaws committee, when they go into review, they will be able to add some of these items to it. Is there, yes?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I, in theory, completely agree with everything. Not even in theory, like, I actually agree with what's Craig saying. I don't know why I said that. Using theory is all I do. Okay, but like your example was very vivid for me. Of students read the chapter, come in, but we all know what happens when they don't. Is we have to talk about the material. I can't send them home and go, well, I guess you guys just won't ever know about this chord. Just good luck as musicians. No, I have to slow down. And so I was just wondering, is this Senate willing to actually, okay, we have to decide between mortuary science. No, we'll do neither as a principle. Like, I don't know, are we strong enough to like kind of hurt ourselves? I don't know. I just wanted to kind of get a sense for what people thought, because I agree completely, but the district, everybody else won't follow our bylaws. If we say, you have to give us 2 weeks, they'll be like, no, here's 2 days. Then what do we do? Are we actually going to throw the baby out of the bathwater? In some cases. Obviously, sometimes it might be worth it, but if we create like a policy, I think we have to be careful with that, because I don't know that we're ready to really, to sacrifice the potential opportunity of a mortuary science thing, for example, because we feel in principle that we must sort of protect ourselves.
That's why I mentioned, like, as far as a bylaw, if we're willing to streamline something, it should come with like a 2/3 majority. But if we are, if we say no, we're gonna dig our heels in and really give this the full process. You know, we've already made decisions. We've already made decisions that I personally felt throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay.
We've already done that, and from my perspective, where I've said, you know what. This process has gotten so sideways. I don't think that we're making smart decisions, not even right or wrong decisions, but informed decisions. And I've said personally, my own feeling with conversations with Brian and other people, that I'm okay saying, you know what, we're not going to participate in this way. That's my personal feeling. I don't know if other people on the Senate feel that way, but I'm totally on board with that idea. That in order to send a message to the bodies that we work with, we might have to push back, and that might involve saying, you know what, you don't have a Senate resolution on this. Tough. Deal with it. Come to us better prepared. Give us the time we need to do what we need to do. Period. And we can't do that on everything. But I think that's something we might want to do down the road, because I don't see that it's necessarily going to change until we push back.
Tina.
I agree with everything that Craig has said. I think that the one thing I see in the Senate that we do lack in some ways is process, as far as just identifying how we do things. And I think that all of the things that we have to move on immediately, that should be an exception rather than what it's become, which is standard operating procedure. And I think that what we need to understand is do we really want this to be a shared governance program? And if it is, that means we have to get feedback from all of our constituents. I mean, we represent bodies of people out here. All of us come from different divisions. The whole thing with I'm on the bylaws committee, and the whole thing with creating the bylaws committee and opening it up to faculty was to get feedback from a lot of people, a lot of differing people, because I know that I'm over in health science. It's a totally different animal than this side of the world. And we have to respect each other's guidelines. Kathy, I realize that they come to you, and when there's money involved, they want to know now and like that. However, like you said, many times some member of the committee will know what's going on, and they can provide that information just to the Senate president, because just letting people know that, hey, they're going to want a deal on this, whether you've got all the people on the committee or not, or everybody's in agreement, they're going to want an answer on this within 2 weeks. So I'm giving you a heads up. I think that we as senators, or I'm an acting senator here now today, but we as constituencies can give the Senate president, hey, a heads up, or the secretary, or come up with a process that says, who do we give heads up to if we find out? And if we're put on a place where money, because it's always money runs everything. If we're put on a place where the money, it's a matter of not being able to get the money because we need to get in there as soon as possible and get it out here so we can all be vetted. And so the process can run properly, because you're right, Craig, I vote no. I don't have a problem voting no. Even though people from my division ask me to represent, I will vote no, because I think it's more important to vet things properly than to be stuck with something that we have to live with the rest of the time.
Unless someone's calling a motion to adjourn, so moved. Is there a second? No, it takes priority because it's after our time. So is there a second on the motion to adjourn? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Nay. I got 3. Motion carries. Folks, I will see you in December.
What you said.
We've got to bring that point into
Even wordier than when I speak. I had a whole list of different things I wanted to talk to you about, kind of reaffirming my position and clarifying my position on Measure J at the last time I spoke to you. I wanted to clarify that I did not stand opposed or for Measure J. My request was simply for more information so that we can make a clear, concise, and informed decision. One of the things I wanted to bring up was, in particular, my use of clairvoyancy. At this point, I, as a student, and several other students, were desperate for anything, even a psychic vision that would give us some forethought or some foresight into the future of what was going to happen to make an informed decision. I will try to word myself more carefully next time so that those of varying academic credentials and levels can properly understand me. There's a lot of things that I heard on the video that I was wanting to address. But again, it's a moot point. The votes have been cast. What's going to happen is what's going to happen. I particularly wanted to address the information we had got before, and this is the reply provided by President Simpson to the ICC that we received the day after the vote, and according to the print date on that was printed out on the 28th. But the information that we received, as I've read it, I thought was kind of inadequate, and I wanted to give all of you an opportunity to see what I'm seeing, and if you agree or disagree, unfortunately I will not be able to be here to hear that. I will watch the video though. But I did want to I wanted to put out there the information I was receiving to better provide understanding for where I was coming from with my position. The final thing I wanted to say that as a veteran, the use, the effigy, the mock-up, the image, and the word veteran carries a lot of weight in this country. Do it for the veterans has become the new, won't someone think of the children? I don't want us put on a pedestal. No veteran wants us put on a pedestal. Just because we have served does not mean we are any smarter, stupider, better, or worse than any other person. What I do take offense to is when those who've never put on a uniform, who've never picked up a rifle, who've never stood a post, and who have never put their life as sacrifice to this country, choose to use this benevolent position we've been granted, this benevolent title we've been granted in this country now, where veterans can do no wrong, and dear God, don't vote for anything against them, otherwise you're opposing the veterans and you're un-American. Call back to McCarthyism days. It is an insult to everything that we have done. Every morning that we woke up at 4:30, shaved our face, put on our PT gear, we went out and ran 5, 10 miles. We would go practice on the range, shooting, practice our demo, practice close order drill. All this stuff we did when we deployed. We did not do that to come back here and have our service used as leverage to grease the skids for a measure, a vote, a politician, anybody that is not acting above board. The concerns I brought to you before were simply that I did not believe Measure J was acting above board. I did not like that my veteran status was associated with it. It was an insult and a slight.
We start looking for all the interactions that we had in July of that year.
Oh, I see. I don't know how you open it up.
And I love my room. Nice to meet you.
Actually, one of my favorites.
Yes, sir.
So there's the studies.
Oh, where is that? Oh, right there it is.
What's that? No, they have candy. I'm like the big red thing. No, I'm just at candy right now because it's on mine.
Wait, Gio making a push, right?
Yeah, he made it already. I think. I'll get to the same thing. No, let me start.
Make up the same. Vintage guns.
One of them, yep.
He was
Like a sport for old guys.
These guys are current teachers, and I think it's a 2-year position, but they oversee, and then they have to go through re-election. So our fellow educators have to say, okay, we either want you to just keep running, or we don't.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call to order this first Academic Senate meeting of November, the only Academic Senate meeting of November, and the second to the last Academic Senate meeting of this semester.
So who's counting?
Who's counting? There it is. So, are there any alternates here? I see Kathy Wada for Sarah Jones, and we have for our academics, our associated students. You've already got that one? Okay. I got that message, but I don't see her yet. Is that our only alternate? All right. Is there anyone here for public commentary?
Yes.
All right. So I'll start over on this side, work my way over if you don't mind. Gary, what do you have for us?
I received an anonymous letter from a person stating that they were an adjunct that I've been asked to read. I'm a part-timer and not very new to this campus. I was so happy last year about having more part-timers in Academic Senate. It's not easy to speak up. We are mostly a silent majority. It's difficult for me to speak up, so I'm writing this. Part-timers and students are a majority minority. That's why I'm especially upset by the video from the last Senate meeting. A very respectful...
Everyone get a chance to review them? I'll entertain a motion to accept them as written. That's a bit technically doesn't mean.
Motion to accept.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Any items that need to be adjusted on it, otherwise they will be accepted as written. Very well. We will move on to public commentary then. We were moving this way. Dr. Simpson, welcome to Academic Senate.
Really, I just wanted to give you an update, a few reports. First, I'm not going to steal any thunder here, but the board took a momentous decision on Tuesday and approved a baccalaureate degree for Cypress College. I want to say that it was not without controversy because the DCCC voted 4 in favor of Fullerton College, 3 in favor of Cypress College, 1 abstention. And the concern that was expressed at the board was that was the faculty primarily advising the board, and they're required to primarily rely. And I agree with that. But to primarily rely doesn't mean must act in accord with. And this was a case, one of the very, very few cases I know of in the district when the board did not act in accord with, in essence, the will of the Senate. That is a very serious matter, but I believe that any unbiased or disinterested party who looked at the facts and the strengths of the programs being presented would have agreed with the board's decision. You will not be surprised to hear that Fullerton would disagree with my position. The next item, you see barrier fences in front of the college. We're installing the marquee, so that's going forward. We expect that will be completed before we come back for the spring break. I wanted to give you a Measure J update. As of 5 p.m. yesterday, in Orange County, Measure J stands at 55%. In Los Angeles County, which is a very small piece of the electorate, the vote was 51.5%. And so that's about 3,500 votes, and that's enough to have us just under overall 55%. But there are 21,000 uncounted votes. And each of the last 2 days, we have picked up about 1,000, about 600. If that trend continues, Measure J will in fact pass. We'll see. So after this meeting, I'll be in my office. Right at 5 o'clock, they post it. And I remain optimistic, but cautiously, after the disappointment of election night. And finally, I just wanted to inform all of you, if you weren't aware, on the board agenda Tuesday night, there was, in the personnel part of the packet, Dr. Dauphiny announced his retirement, and he will be leaving us. February 28th will be his last day. And I believe it will be a very significant loss for the district. He's been an outstanding and effective leader, an effective advocate for us. And speaking for myself, I will very much miss his leadership. And I thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you very much. Moving on, public commentary. All right.
Good afternoon, Senators, fellow guests. I had prepared a little speech, but then I realized that when I write, I get...
Oh yeah, you know, I've enjoyed being on this website.
That is amazing. It's one of these things where it's fascinating that they were able to do that. Just interesting to me.
Amazing new book, yeah. Does Gio have the ability
Absolutely, absolutely.
Of course. Someone once told me if you want people to come to a meeting, entice them with something valuable.
do you have the ability to update a post on Cypress?
Oh, we're putting them right in the center.
Oh, wow. You try any kind of
Okay, that, you can do it from there if you want. They really push this side. I don't think I'll be able to.
How about you?
I have staff papers that seem like
somewhat shocked.
That is Brian.
No, I
But they all do. But I want to, Winchester 73, and I want to shoot it in, let's go short rifle. Like target barrel.
But unfortunately,
The middle of July,
Student who was a veteran came to speak about bond measure J. He used his rights and then respectfully left. What happened after that, I'm appalled at. A senator spoke in favor of the measure and then directly criticized many of the opinions of the brave student who wasn't even in the room to speak back. This is a mean thing, and if you need proof, you can watch the YouTube video. I watched this part many times because it does not make sense that teachers would criticize a student for respectfully expressing his thoughts and questions. How can teachers on Senate say they are surprised that students speak up for what they believe? Are senators so powerful they can easily question student motives and say it is a bad thing for students to speak up and ask questions? I am ashamed that this has happened to the student. How can teachers publicly scold a student and then treat him like he was wrong to speak up and ask questions? Plus, the brave student was not even in the room. I am ashamed as a teacher, but I am only part-time here, like most of the people on campus. No senator teacher stood up for the student or stopped a mean criticism of his speech when he wasn't even there to speak back. That is why I'm writing this. All the Senate teachers seemed comfortable and accepting of publicly scolding the student for his opinions and questions. Everyone should watch the YouTube video and ask themselves why this happened. I am very sad to see teachers believe they have so much power because they can say things without being questioned themselves. Maybe Cypress Senate is a place of power for only a few. I am questioning, but I have to question secretly in order to feel safe.
Our wonderful, wonderful secretary just brought to my attention, I skipped over the adoption of the agenda. And
I'll take back everything I just said and we'll do it again later.
So forgive me, I was overwhelmed with the public presence. I was certainly looking forward to hearing their public commentary first, which is why I clearly forgot to adopt the agenda. Folks, there's a couple of items on the agenda that would be within the purview of time sensitivity. One of which is what we adjourned on last time, which was the newsroom hours. So I would ask that we would entertain that item first, right underneath public commentary, and leave off the special reports and the president's report until after that item, if that would be okay.
Under that item, I would also like to move up the new business item of funding your expenses for plenary. Considering that you're there right now, sort of, and that expenses, you know, it's an issue.
Okay.
I'd like to bring that right up to under the item that you just mentioned.
Okay, so right now we would have, after adoption of the agenda and public commentary, the letter A under unfinished business, and then item A under new business, which would be the plenary session funding. Okay. Is everyone okay with those moving up underneath public commentary?
Yes.
Okay. Very well. Then I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. Then I will move to approval of the minutes from October 23rd. Are there any corrections?